everyone, and welcome to Writers Drinking Coffee. This is a podcast of a bunch of writers sitting around drinking and talking about writing, publishing, and the whole creative process. We will not censor ourselves, so consider us PG-13. Today's hosts involve all the usual cast of characters with a repeat guest, Alma Alexander. This is episode 72, A Creature by Any Other Stripe. Welcome back, Alma.
Hey, nice to be back. Thank you for having me.
Oh, delighted. We were thinking, because you also wrote a series on shapeshifting. We had Carrie Vaughn had been with us previously talking about her kitty books, but you have a wider Were Chronicles set with a lot more animals, right? Tell us about yours.
Well, you know what they say about the fact that there's no original ideas left in the world, that the last original story was told around the fire in Neanderthal times? Well, to take a quote from one of my favorite musicals, Camelot, will old you humilite, I think I actually got about 3 or 4 brand new ideas in here that nobody's ever actually touched on before. Starting with my creature kind of characters, I don't know if anybody, I don't think I've ever seen it before. I don't know, maybe you know about somebody, but I haven't seen it before. Have you ever heard of a concept of a random were?
Random, yeah. No. I think there's many animals that I've seen that are by nature turn into men.
In my little sphere, random weres, they will turn into something, and then that is going to be their basic form, as it were. But they're also blessed or cursed, depending on the circumstances, if they get hit by seeing something at the point of their turn. They're going to turn into the last warm-blooded creature they see as they turn.
Wow.
Which can be, random. My protagonist's mother is a weird chicken because of an unfortunate farmyard accident. She just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the last thing she saw was a chicken, so she stayed a chicken.
And she gets stuck like that for the rest of her life?
As a basic form, yes. If she is somewhere and he happens to be next to a cat, as she turns, she's going to turn into the cat.
Yeah. So it's a
kind of an echo shift.
Can you fake this so that, there she is doomed to turn into a chicken, and she doesn't want to. So the next time she finds herself turning, she dashes off to find a cat. Would that work?
It would if she wanted to, but mostly they're trying very hard to keep themselves. Well, we'll get to this. Okay. My other new idea is that the weres tend to, in a classical form, in classical literature, tend to turn in the full moon, right? Well, yeah. I've got new moon were as well.
Okay.
Oh, so how does that affect changing, though?
Instead of turning or changing for 3 days at the full moon, they do that in the new moon. So basically, they just kind of randomly, if I may use the word, oppose. They just turn in the wrong phase of the moon. Okay. So what I've got here is a hierarchy right now. I've got here a sort of social setup. I have the old world where weird critters are still very much hidden, feared, hunted, destroyed because people don't understand them. And you've got the new world, which is kind of sort of America, where they are integrated into society and kind of accepted, sort of. But they have to carry ID cards with paw prints on them. And there's a thing that they are accepted. They are within society. They are kind of among us, but they have to live by rules like you wouldn't believe. And when they are turned, at turn times, they literally have to, if you are well healed enough, lock yourself up into your own little cage and have somebody supervise you while you're turned into a different animal form. Or if you don't happen to have that luxury, you have to show up at a government-run turning house. And
wow.
And basically, these are houses of ill repute, very ill repute.
I'm sure they are. That's awesome.
Because they don't really treat them very well there. But then there's all kinds of other hierarchies within the were, because you've got the sort of the top rank were and then the totem pole all the way down. And at the top of the totem pole are the very shadowy and very, very secretive and very kind of, and I didn't mean to make them the villains, and they're not really, but they sort of are, the actual lichens, the werewolves themselves.
Well, what about, I was going to say, that's very kind of Western and European centric. In Mesoamerica, the Nahuals could one of their common forms that they talk about is the were turkey. And I'm just saying that's very close to a dinosaur.
That's true.
Yeah.
And so
That's
the
true.
chicken would be.
And then I said I've got just a range of other creatures all the way down the totem pole. The corvids are the next kind of ranking, and the ravens and crows and what have you. They're the next rank down, and then there's a kind of rank all the way down. But here we have a situation where in the first I've got 3 books in this series, and they're not a trilogy; they're a triptych.
Excellent. So
They're basically the same story, but they're told through each book is told through a different prism, a different viewpoint.
neat.
So tell us a little bit more about that. So it's the same world, but it's just 3 different characters within the world, and they have different wear shapes?
Yeah, well, the first book is random, and it concerns Jazz, who happens to be the youngest daughter in a random family, and she makes a mess of things by turning at a slightly inconvenient moment, and nobody had provided. You see, the thing is, for a young random, the first time they turn, they have to imprint on a creature because that's their form. That's their final form. Yeah. So before they turn for the first time, they get locked in a turning room with the creature they want to be.
Right.
But she's too young for this, and nobody was prepared. Nothing was prepared for her. Nothing was expected for her. But she was in the same room with a friend of hers, and so she turns into a boy.
Ah.
Okay.
She's a weird boy.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's so clever. I mean, the same boy, or does it, because that's true.
Well, into her own version of a boy, but she turns into a male.
Oh, so it's as if she were a male. Okay. Oh, that's cool.
Which kind of plays havoc with everything, because A, nobody thought this was possible. B, the people who are sort of babysitting her while her parents and her family is turned, kind of lose their collective shit about it.
Yeah, I bet.
But nobody knows what to do with her. And it sort of gets hushed up and swept under the carpet. But there's a problem here that is worse than this, because she has an older brother. And the older brother, who is also a random, basically hasn't turned yet. He's 17. He's the oldest unturned weir of his generation. And he's starting to feel the fact that everybody knows this. He's being pointed at and laughed at because he just hasn't turned. So he decides to take matters into his own hands, and he engineers it. He's a random, but he engineers a turn into a lichen, into a wolf. And because he turns into a wolf, therefore he's no longer random. So the wolves take him in as a real lichen, as a wolf.
Ah.
He hasn't thought this through at all, because he's doing this because of a very good reason. He's absolutely bowed by the load of guilt, because there is, you see, a situation here. There was another sister. Another sister who was the older sister who turned into something weird at school and was bullied and bullied and bullied. And then she had a special occasion where she needed to be herself, to go and see a favorite writer of hers, but her teacher, who is a piece of work, who hated the weir, and he made absolutely sure that he could do whatever that he wants to spite them. He made sure that happened when she was supposed to be turned. And there's a drug which you can take to delay your turn. So she took an overdose.
Oh.
And an overdose that was given to her by her brother.
Ooh.
And he's kind of living under the guilt of this, and he's completely wrecked by it. And when he turns in, he turns into a wolf because the wolves are the ones who developed this drug.
Oh, okay.
And he's absolutely determined to get to the bottom of this and find out, have closure, have revenge, have something.
The moral of the story is don't go see your favorite writer if you are a shapeshifter. I think that's cool.
Yeah, but he can't do this by himself. So that's the second book. That's Wolf. But he can't do this by himself. And the third book is Shifter. And the Shifter, the character, he's a complete freak. He's an outlier. He's not really a weir. He's a shifter. He can turn into whatever he wants whenever he wants to. And it's him who he's a good friend of our little wolf. But and he has his own reasons to be interested in what the wolves are doing. So he bites the boy to turn him into a wolf
Oh.
by turning into a wolf himself. So he's the one that pushes this whole thing forward. And I'm going to, and it's just, the whole thing is wrapped around the sister who is a central figure in all of this, and they're all working around this guilt complex about what happened to the sister, which isn't really what happened to the sister at all. So there's a whole complex things going on. And of course, these are the books that I've turned full circle on, because what I did, I don't know if you guys know this, but I've got a master's degree in molecular biology.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, really?
So what I did was I just sat down and I worked a completely cogent and perfectly feasible genetic basis for being Weir.
Cool.
So not harkening back to the first Weir, one of the early Weir stories I remember was Thetis, the Titan, turning into a fly by Zeus, who tricked her and swallowed her, and that's where we got Athena later.
Yeah, well, in this case, there is, I'm going to get a little bit technical here. There are things called operons. And operons in our genetic material, basically nothing is consistently connected in our genome. You've got bits here and bits there and bits somewhere else, and in between is a lot of junk DNA. And what an operon does is basically tell the thing that is supposed to be happening with that gene, okay, we are starting to read this gene now. This is the gene we're looking for. And it's going to send the RNA, the reading genetic material, from bit to bit to bit until we get the right thing happening. But in between, there's a lot of junk DNA, which is not really junk DNA because it works for other things with other operons. It's all interconnected. So what I'm just positing is that there's a separate operon in a Weir creature, which then starts reading the genetic material for that creature.
I like it.
My old professor, the guy who was basically presiding over my master's degree, actually said the science is as good as it gets.
Oh, cool.
Do you deal? So did I miss how you deal with mass conversion?
No, good question. And I actually get into that too because of the shifter, because he can change into anything. And at one point, he's actually in a situation where he changes into several creatures in quick succession. And he explains this because it's a conversion thing. You get an increase in metabolism the smaller you get, and a decrease in metabolism the higher, the bigger you get from your own shape, because that's the payoff. In other words, you are a supercharged mouse, but if you're turned into a bear, you're practically comatose.
Oh, I can see that. So if I go to dragon, for instance, all I'm going to do is lie around in the sun all day.
Pretty much.
Oh, no.
No.
Yeah.
I can make this sound good.
But you couldn't turn into a dragon because dragons are reptile and they're not warm-blooded.
Well, in that case, I couldn't turn into Thetis's fly either, really, because they are also not really warm-blooded.
Yeah, my premise is that this is a warm-blooded thing.
Okay. I like it because
No, I like that. So you couldn't be a dragon, you couldn't be a lizard, you couldn't be one of those things.
Arachne couldn't turn into a spider in this theory, but
Yeah, but you could be a cat, and what else could you want to be?
So, Alma, what are the names of your 3 shapeshifter books so that we know how to read them in order?
First one is Random. Second one is Wolf. Third one is Shifter. But
Is there going to be a fourth?
Sorry?
Is there going to be a fourth?
Well, let me just say the joy of it is you don't have to read them in order, because there is an omnibus edition in which they all appear in order, so you can read them in the order in which they appear. And the omnibus is due to drop in December the 8th of this benighted year of 2020.
I love the omnibuses of everything. That was how I've gotten a whole lot of books.
As for your other question, whether there's going to be number 4, there's probably going to be 4, 5, and 6 at some point, because I left myself open. I mean, I basically started a war at the end of these books. now I have a sort of a debt to the people I threw into it.
So when you view of this, I mean, and I loved that you went over the history you had of the actual biology of how this could possibly work. Where did you look back in history to say, I don't want to do that and I don't want to do that? What were your favorite history of shape-shifting stories or therianthropy or?
Well, I'm not sure I did it that way. I'm a complete pantser. I don't really do that kind of historical thing. But I know I read enough of the stuff that was in there that I didn't think that there was a random Weir in the mix before. I just kind of added that in as extra spice. But the thing about look, I do this all the time. I start out something and it's supposed to be a short story. And before I know it, it's a book. And before I know it, it's 3 books.
When is the moment that you realized this first one was more than a short story? Well, was it just like, oh gosh, here I am at 6,000 words and I am so not done?
Here I am at 10,000 words and I'm so not done. But the thing about this book is that these books is that the world evolved at such a speed and it's with such complexity that I had this fruiting mushroom fungi body that was throwing out spores left, right, and center, and I just had to scramble to follow.
So if somebody was going to get in, do you have any ones that you think are similar? Because shape-shifting is very popular online. It is like one of the hot new things to do. Do you consider them pure fantasy, or is there a touch of romance, or is there a touch of noir and darkness? What's your meld on these?
There's a very organic kind of romantic subplot here with Mal and his wolf pack that takes shape around him. When he's thrown to the wolves, so to speak. He kind of tries to find his feet, and then he gets placed in the pack by the powers that be in the wolf pack, and they get mated by the wolf pack. They basically the decisions get made. Like you are going to get married or mated, and because we want those children. And he gets mated to this girl, who turns out to be a very special character in her own right.
Is this Jazz?
No, Jazz is the younger sister.
Okay.
Mal gets mated to a girl called Asia, who is a bit of a wild child, who's a little bit of an outlier herself. And they kind of decided to get these 2 outlying wolves that didn't quite mesh in the real kind of wolf pack, but they were going to throw them together and see what happens. And they become a partnership. They become a real. Initially, it was a question of, oh my God, I don't even know you. But they start working together, and they start working as a pair, as a partnership. And one of my absolutely favorite scenes in this entire series is when Asia basically defies her original pack and says, the alpha female forms a new pack. You made me an alpha female. I'm forming my own pack. You made it happen. Goodbye.
That's excellent. So there was a line on yours, because I haven't read these. I still have to wait for the omnibus and pick them up. Although I loved your Secrets of Jin sheet. Just had to throw that in there. I read it since we did our thing. Oh, it's magnificent. You all have to go run out and read it right now. But back to this thing. You had a story on your webpage. You talk about Jazz March and say she changed into a boy. Just a human boy or a wolf boy? Or
a human boy. She changed into a boy.
That's fantastic.
And quite aside from anything else, I mean, this is something that wreaks havoc with your own psychology, because all of a sudden you've got a completely different point of view from everything.
Well, it is. I mean, and I am loving the story of characters that have shifted different genders. I mean, they are all through history, through mythology. We all remember that Loki turned into a girl and then gave birth to, slept near the horse. And then, so I think it's great. What were you thinking of when you wrote it? Were you thinking just the shock of the psychology, or was this sort of an homage and an acknowledgement to transgender?
I didn't really begin it by that, but of course it did become a little bit of an exploration in the subject matter, inevitably, because of all the things that kind of got dragged into it. And one of the things that she found out, that I found out as she found out, is basically she gets turned into a male form. That's her basic wear form. She gets turned into a male form, which means that her entire body changes, and her genetics and her hormones and her everything changes, and her innards change for those 3 days, which means, as she was told, that she will basically never be able to carry a pregnancy to term.
Right, because once a month if you're not a girl. Yeah.
Because it's an automatic miscarriage.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the other thing, there's the question of, what if she's one of those that thought to herself, wow, whatever I do, I don't want to have children. And you can say that. And then somebody says, well, not only can't, but you cannot physically have children. Does that give you a little bit of, well, hey, I don't know that I wanted to, but being told I can't, there's a conflict there.
There is a little bit of a twinge in her, that thing. But when I say there's going to be 3 more, there's a second generation in place already. the sister had a child in circumstances which I will not even tell you about. You better find out in the books.
Right.
And this girl, this child, is basically a product of the lichens genetic programming type of thing, and she's completely insane.
You've just made me think about something that I've never thought before. So here's something kind of fun. We have, as human, blood types. I have never thought about, do animals have blood types? Do they have blood types?
Yeah, I think so.
Are they the similar blood type? Because I know insulin, you give your insulin to your diabetic cat. For instance, I've had a diabetic cat. It's the same kind of insulin as you give that. So I was suddenly interested in, is it blood typing? That means because if I am turning into a werewolf and I was pregnant, I am still pregnant as a werewolf because I'm still, female and pregnant and all that. But is there any weird thing for my puppies, or does the blood shift? Because I was just thinking about blood shift suddenly, and I've never thought of that before. So it's your fault.
Well, once you're actually pregnant, all kinds of other things come into play, because my particular story is that when a woman gets pregnant, she stops shifting.
Okay.
For the duration of that pregnancy. So you can't just you're not pregnant as a woman and then you shift into a pregnant wolf.
Okay. Now I'm suddenly having a reverse. What if Chaz here, sorry, I'm going to use you, Chaz, you suddenly turn into this kind of weird creature, but because the human nearest you, let's say the boys are locked in the room, is Karen, you change into a woman for 3 nights a month.
Yeah.
What if you get knocked up while you're a girl?
I suspect I lose it when I become a boy again.
You change back to a man and the whole thing goes away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably uncomfortably. Thank you, Jeannie, for wishing this upon me.
Well, I'm terribly sorry. I just feel obliged to kind of throw it out there as
No, absolutely.
I'm looking at this both ways, because this makes, I love the way you're making me stop and think, Alma.
Well, I had to kind of think this through when I got there. This is what I mean when I started writing this story, and all of a sudden I was going, this is not a short story. This is just not.
This is too complicated. I'm not sure I could sum that up in a novella even.
Yeah, and all of a sudden I had 3 books on my hands and what have you. But the third, the second trilogy is going to be the second generation. Like I said, the sister's child is a quite mad creature who's already in the lichen hands. And then Mal has a son, and my shifter character has twins. And we don't know whether either of them has inherited the actual shifter thing or not.
Okay.
So there's a whole second generation that's happening there. At some point, I've got too much going on right now. I've got about 4 different projects in the back burner.
Well, I loved your Chalky because he reminded me more of like the Zeus. Zeus in mythology could change to whatever he wanted at any time, like some of the Titans could too. I mean, I'm a golden shower. Look at me, I'm a plant. Look at me, I'm a swan. Look at me, I'm a... So
yeah, I never understood the pleasure in being a golden shower, frankly.
I always considered it to be a euphemism.
Did you?
That's just me. I don't take many of the, let's call it, origin myth books to be word for word true. Otherwise you just start giggling madly right about the turtles.
Yeah. All the way down.
Cool. So all right, process-wise, did this just come tumbling out of your? How long did it take you to write? Did you write the 3 of them consecutively, or are they things that just keep eating at you and you come back? What's your process?
Pretty much. I mean, once I wrote the first book, then that ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, and then I wrote the second book from a completely different point of view. But it's the same story; it's just a completely different angle. But it takes it a little bit further. And then the third story is kind of the same story, but from Shifter's kind of angle, from Chalky's kind of point of view, which takes it into a different direction altogether. So it's 3 different prisms, but it's the same story.
That's why you call it a triptych rather than a trilogy.
Yes.
I like that.
But in that kind of context, I mean, I was just writing them consecutively, and I was just shifting my prism, if you like, shifting my lens, and then looking at the story through a different set of eyes, because every single one of these books is written in the first person.
Right.
So Jazz, Mal, and Chalky, and they all see things from a very different perspective.
Sure.
Because not all of them know all the same things. What did they know it? When did they know it? Kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And you, as a pantser, you don't know those things either until you actually come to write them, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
yeah. I mean, you do the world building as you go.
Chalky was a revelation, and I mean, he was he's real. I swear to you, this creature is real. There was one point when he was sitting on my bed at 3:00 in the morning, kicking his heel against the bed and telling me, I did not say what you said I said, and if I did say it, I didn't say it in the way you said I said it. So fix it.
My good, did you see the movie or The Man Who Invented Christmas?
The who?
It's called The Man Who Invented Christmas, and it's the story of Charles Dickens writing A Christmas
yes,
Carol.
I heard of it. I haven't seen it, no.
Well, you're going to have to see it because Christopher Plummer plays, the first thing he needs is a main character, and he gets Scrooge. And as soon as he comes up with Scrooge and he says he knows what he's like, Christopher Plummer appears and then mocks him and picks on him for the rest of the movie. And that sounds so much like that.
Oh boy, do I identify with that?
You didn't really need to say anything more than Christopher Plummer, really.
Well, that sends me to one happy place, I tell you. So
yes.
No, my characters tend to be very real people, and I tend to get annoyed little notes from them stuck on the sort of post-its on my brain. We did not do this. We don't want to do that. Go in a different direction. We're on strike. We're not going to do anything you say anymore until you do what we say you do.
Exactly. And I like it when you lie down and you're about to go to bed and then you're suddenly like, oh, crap, I have to get up and write that thing down right now. And then there you are.
Oh, yeah. Been there, done that, eaten the nightshirt in frustration. Yeah.
I don't know, but I think there's something in respecting the train because the train isn't always with you. So when the train shows up at your station, you get on and you ride that thing.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is...
I mean, not this particular thing, but one of my other stories that I remember, it woke me up because I mostly dreamt it, and it woke me up at 5:00 in the morning. And my computer's downstairs, which is too far away. My husband's office is across the hall from our bedroom. So 5:00 in the morning, and I'm telling you this now, and believe me, I am not a morning person. I do not get up early, willingly or easily. I am not at all functional at 5:00 in the morning. But this story decided to sort of take root in my brain. So I stumbled out of bed, crossed the hallway, blearily into his computer, started typing at random just to get the bones down. And he woke up and he came over and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Go away, I'm not awake."
Best ever. Now, you also have, I went out and I jumped in on your Kickstarter because I'm dying for a copy of, you have a book about fairy tales coming out soon. Tell us about your Kickstarter.
Happens, the story I just mentioned was actually one of the stories in that book.
Marvelous. Is it retellings or is it some new myths too that you're giving us?
It's a mix. It's a mix. There's some things in it that you will recognize as a retelling of something that you will know, but there are completely original things in there as well. But the story that I was telling you about, the one that woke me up at 5:00 in the morning, a couple of years ago, I edited an anthology called Children of a Different Sky.
I think I actually read that. It was you. Oh.
Yeah.
I've admired you for even longer than I thought.
The thing about that was it was a sort of gut response to the whole Trump thing and the refugee situation. Mm-hmm. And I needed to do something for somebody. So I kind of created this anthology for refugees, about refugees, and the proceeds of it were going to refugee charities. So I did that, and that was obviously on my brain. And the story that woke me up was, what if your Disney princesses, the princesses you know from your Disney princesses, what if they were refugees? And I wrote the story of Cinderella.
Refugee
That's
Cinderella.
One of the stories in the fairy tale book. Cinderella as the refugee.
Well, Snow White was kind of a refugee when you think about it.
Well, she's in there. There's a 4-piece kind of tetralogy of stories in there about 4 of the Disney princesses. That's Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Little Mermaid, and Snow White.
Yeah. No, that totally works. I can see all of those. That's going to be great. So we will include a link to that so that you can all go out and back it and get your own copy, because mine is going to be mine.
We just broke halfway, so
yay! And are there any special things for people who want to contribute more?
Oh yeah, once I get to a certain point, there's a particular level of pledge, which I'm sure nobody's going to get to, but if they do that, then I'm going to consider original art for the cover.
Ooh, and this is her Fractured Fairy Tales Kickstarter. I will put a link into it. Actually, I'll put links to all of your stories and the interesting things we've mentioned on our website, which is www.writersdrinkingcoffee.com. You can find us on Facebook or Twitter, and if you have questions for Alma, you're here to answer their questions, right?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. You've been listening to Writers Drinking Coffee, a labor of love and enthusiasm put together by the hosts. Our main web support magic is brought to you by Deirdre McGaffey-Schween, and our sound engineer and backup web spider is Dave Welsh. Our intro music is Pretty Maid Milking a Cow, and our exit music is Breakfast with the Morning Person, both by Michael Engberg. You can hear more from Michael Engberg on manyhatsmusic.com. Our podcast sponsors are Jackal Designs, who makes all of our cool WDC swag, and the Bean Scene in downtown Sunnyvale, California. And hey, thanks for listening.